That way we can see how a recording of a recording works, right?
There we go. True. All right, so tonight's presentation is on KPIs versus OKRs. And again, the speaker is Joseph Paris. This is a previously recorded presentation that was given in July of this year, I believe. Joe Paris helps companies around the world to become high-performance organizations, expert in operational excellence, organizational design, continuous improvement, and strategy development and deployment. Joe believes that time is the enemy of the 21st century company, and the company that is in a state of readiness, the company that can see further beyond the horizon, recognizes opportunities and threats more quickly. He has achieved a superior level of operational excellence and possesses the organizational capacity and capability to devise and deploy decisive responses faster than the competition, maintains control of the narrative and cadence, and has become a high-performance organization will have the competitive edge. His end goal is to help create high-performance individuals working in high-performance teams for high-performance organizations. Bob, I will hand it over to you to start the recording.
Great, thank you. Of course, perfect timing. The plumber just arrived, but I'll let my wife get him started. Yeah, so this presentation was actually delivered live on July 10th, I believe, as part of a co-sponsored webinar between SWAY, the Southwest Alliance for Excellence, the Baldridge people, and ASQ Phoenix. So it was a special webinar. We recorded it because we had every intention of using this topic in our December meeting. So we had the benefit of some foresight and planning here. So Joe, as Hillary introduced, he is actually the owner and the leader of the LinkedIn group Operational Excellence. So if any of you have joined that group, or if you're just hearing about it for the first time and you would be interested in learning more about the topics, he is the owner of that LinkedIn group, and anybody can join the group and participate. So with that, I am going to begin the playback, and hopefully we got all the audio settings set correctly. We did a little pilot before everybody joined in. So let me first make sure everybody is muted. It looks like you are. Then I will share my screen and hit the recording playback. Oh, who's that character?
I recognize him.
Good morning. This is Bob Mitchell. I am the voice of customer chair for the ASQ Phoenix section. And you are logged into a special webinar that is being offered through ASQ Phoenix in concert with our partner, Southwest Alliance for Excellence.
Hey, we're not seeing the presentation.
You're not still seeing it. All right. Well, let me go back.
Is she okay?
Share. Are you seeing it now?
Yes.
Great. Good. Thank you for letting me know. So again, this is a webinar being presented by both ASQ and SWAY.
Are they adulty?
I can hear somebody talking in the background.
There's probably a way you can mute everybody there and then just unmute yourself and myself.
Yep. So our speaker today, by special request, is Joseph Paris. He is a recognized international expert on operational excellence and organizational design, continuous improvement, and strategy development and deployment. Joe today is going to be talking about a topic that's really hot right now. If you go to the LinkedIn or any other internet site and you're involved with planning or projects, see a lot of commentary and quite a few articles debating the pros and cons of what are known as KPIs, or key performance indices, and OKRs. Maybe that's a little bit of a newer term for some of you. It's objective key results. And
Did it? Did others just lose sound?
Horizon, and therefore
Oh.
recognizes opportunities and threats more quickly. And they have achieved a superior level of operational excellence and possess the organizational capacity and capability to devise and deploy decisive responses faster than the competition. And they become a high performance organization that has competitive advantage. So just Joe likes to summarize, his end goal is to help create high performance individuals working in high performance teams for high performance organizations. There's quite the vision statement. So you can see the abstract. Joe's going to be talking about both of these types of metrics and when are they appropriate and how should they be used. And I think with that, I'm just going to turn it over to Joe, and he can have the rest of the time for his presentation. So I'm going to stop sharing, and Joe.
And I will start.
Great.
Thanks, everybody. Thanks for having me. Thanks for inviting me, Bob. Happy to be here today, talking about KPIs and OKRs. Started from the beginning. You can probably see that. Let's see if I could switch screens here. Switch my shares. Share screen 2. There.
Yep.
You're able to see that? And
Yes,
it's able to work. Awesome. All right. So it's funny. Everybody, I believe, will get a copy of this PDF if they want. Bob, I'll make the PDF available to you for distribution.
Great.
If that's okay.
Yep.
I do a lot of things. I've been in business since 1985. And owned my consultancy Zonatech since 1985. Next year it'll be 40 years. Makes me uniquely unemployable, having worked for myself for that long. But I do a lot of things, and I don't want to bore anybody with it, but you'll get a copy of it so you can check it out at your leisure. And of course, I'm on LinkedIn. Let's talk about, get that thing out of the way. Let's talk about the introduction and today's agenda. Talk about performance management first. Amazon has a way of defining their future vision of themselves and marking a path towards that vision. And it's actually also used by the Navy SEALs and a great many other organizations. They work backwards from the end. So the exercise Amazon will perform is on a program or initiative, they will write a press release as if it's done. Now, so sometime in the future, they will just say, we've launched this program, it was a wild success, and this is what we did, and this is what happened, and this is what was involved, and these are our partners, and so forth and so on. And so they work backwards, from the end results. And I think that's sometimes what people are in organizations are not doing. Depends on where they are in the organization. I guess this is where KPIs and OKRs come into play. We want to make sure that we're developing improvements based on the identifying areas for skill enhancement. Now think about that. We have people. People are part of the process. They're a key part of the process. I'm working on a roll-up right now of a private equity firm, portfolio company. And the entire organization is run by the seat of their pants. So for instance, there are no KPIs to speak of. There's tallies. People keep tallies of what was produced on a daily basis, but it's not captured so that trends can be established. So they're supposed to make 100 today and they make 90, they say I made 90. If they make 110 tomorrow, they say I made 110. But they're never ever put into a repository where analysis of this data can be achieved. And you think about KPIs.
The letter you should be receiving today from contracting.
What was that? Oh, sorry.
Call.
So, sorry, I got distracted there from somebody speaking. So you have the KPI that is established, And once this data is tabulated, and it tells you what you're supposed to do based on your trends. And of course, you could then look at your operations and see if you can't improve on those KPIs, but to what end goal? Okay, and it's the end goal that is often missing. So I'll give you an example. Years ago, and this is probably 30 years ago, I was reading an Apex magazine article. And in it was a case study of Volvo. And at the time, Volvo had this particularly unattractive green color in their car, and it wasn't selling. So the dealerships in America got together and they decided that they're going to discount just the green cars to move them off the lot. And so as they're moving these green cars off the lot, back there in Sweden, all the Swedes see is a increase in the sale of green cars in America. So what do? They start making more. Okay, so you think about this, the KPI, are we playing to the KPI and what's it really telling us? And is it telling us the truth? So today's agenda, what are KPIs and OKRs and their purpose? What's the difference between KPIs and OKRs, the pros and cons, when to use KPIs and OKRs, and turning a vision into a reality. I'm going to show you a bit of a game board that I use that actually illustrates this point. So let's see here. There we go. So the purpose of KPIs, at the end of the day, KPIs are measuring operational performance. It's tracking progress towards strategic goals, and it's identifying areas for improvement. So we think about, revenue growth. We take a look at our dashboard. What's the revenue today? What's the revenue per part? What's the revenue per customer? What's revenue per region? KPI that I use oftentimes is variances, purchase price variances. I had a client in Florida during COVID, and other than it being in Florida during COVID, which was kind of special in its own right, this person was in a metal fabrication business. That's what they owned. And for whatever reason, they weren't looking at their PPVs, and they didn't notice that the price of sheet steel had gone up 320%. Now, PPV is in fact a KPI. It's like if you're within 5%, maybe 2%, depending on the industry, then you don't really worry about it too much. But if you see it explode or crater, then you should probably call attention to it. But KPIs are like, in my opinion, KPIs are like diapers. Okay, they should be changed often for the same reasons. Too often, individuals that are measured on a KPI, whose performance is tied to a KPI, whose bonus is tied to a KPI, will learn how to game it. Okay, so these KPIs, I believe, have to be revisited every once in a while, and old ones should be discarded and new ones should be introduced. So I was working with a bottler in the UK. And, say they made 20,000 bottles a day, and that was their KPI. And the person that was running the line was very happy because he was always getting his bonus based on producing 20,000 a day, except that he went on vacation for a month because it's Europe and you do that. And whoever took over the line, his second in command, whoever took over the line was all of a sudden making 27,500 bottles a month. Okay, so instead of 25,000 or a day, instead of 25,000 a day, it was 27,500 a day. And when the person came back from vacation, he was all upset because guess what? The new KPI was 27,500. So I think KPIs, we have to make sure that even though they're indicating what our performance level is right now, doesn't necessarily mean it's good or even satisfactory. And I think that KPIs are a measurement of what is happening in the here and now. OKRs, on the other hand, let's get down. OKRs, on the other hand, they measure progress towards a goal. So I don't know if anybody here sails or not, or if you golf. Golf would be another analogy, right? But either you sail or you golf, you have a starting point and you have individual waypoints, okay, that mark your progress towards your end goal. So OKRs are those measurements for that progress towards your end goal. Now, of course, we're not expecting necessarily that we're going to hit each one of our waypoints on that journey. I mean, if you've ever seen me golf, I have a great plan. I'm going to get my driver out to par 4. I'm going to get my driver out, hit to the 150, 7-iron into the green, 2 punt, I've saved par. All of that goes away. All of that planning goes away on my backswing. Okay, I'm good at survival or recovery shots only because I make so many of them. If I find myself on the fairway, that's when the real trouble begins. So you think about OKRs are those measurements on your journey, those waypoints on your journey. So let's talk about waypoints on the journey. All too often, what I see is that we flounder because we have not set the expectation. What does the vision of this company, what is it 3 or 5 years from now? I was with a client and they wanted to, I asked them, what's the vision of the company in 3 or 5 years time? And after a moment of silence, it was crickets, and I didn't want to share what that was. One brave soul finally volunteered. We want to be the #1 e-commerce fashion provider in all of Europe. And everybody nodded their head in agreement. Yes, that's what we want to be. I said, great. Why doesn't everybody write down what they think #1 means? Now, the person assigned to sales, most sales, finance is the most profitable, warehouse is 100% on-time deliveries. Everybody heard the same message, okay, from the president. We want to be the #1 e-commerce fashion provider in all of Europe. But everybody internalized it from where they sat in the organization. So even we could only hope that the president had a crystal clear vision of what that meant. Everybody subjectively internalized it and placed it where they were in the organization. So if we're thinking about OKRs, how is this organization collectively going to march itself towards that vision of the future? Now, what warehouse management should do is understand what their role in achieving #1 status is, what sales role is achieving #1 status, and so on and so forth, and then establish those waypoints accordingly. Now, the waypoints in this particular case might not be in the same interval. In other words, the first waypoint for sales might be 3 months, but for product design, it might be 6 months or 9 months. So it's not necessarily reasonable that we get together quarterly and compare how we are on that timeline, because different people are going to achieve their next waypoint at different time intervals, if that makes sense. So what's the difference between KPIs and OKRs? Okay, KPIs measure the ongoing performance, as I shared, and they're often they're used for monitoring and reporting. It's almost like a thermometer. Do I have a fever or don't I have a fever? And they're more static and consistent over time, unless, of course, somebody goes on vacation and they come back and the KPI has been reset. Now, OKRs, on the other hand, focus on setting and achieving specific time-bound goals. You think about the Apollo program in the 60s and 70s. They had incremental stages. First stage was just making sure the Saturn V rocket could get off the launch pad successfully. Then the next stage was to orbit the Earth, and the next stage was to take the LEM, and the next stage was to dispatch and then reconnect with the LEM, and then next stage was to go around the moon, and then finally back to Earth and landing on the moon. So that's these achieving specific time-bound goals. And remember, the ultimate time-bound goals set by JFK, that by the end of this decade, which was the 1960s, we'll send a man to the moon and return him safely back to the Earth. Now, believe it or not, returning them safely back to Earth is a lot more difficult than sending them to the moon. And we want to encourage stretch goals and innovation, nothing more obvious than the Apollo program for that. And you want to have your key results frequently updated. So in a nutshell, if you wanted to take the one nugget away from this and you wanted to understand what are KPIs and what are OKRs and what's their difference, I put it down here in this line. KPIs measure the process, OKRs measure the progress. That's really the bottom line. Now, when I first started the Operational Excellence group on LinkedIn, the debates that I saw mostly centered around what's better, Lean or Six Sigma. You know, and at the end of the day, it doesn't matter, right? We're all trying to just improve things. So the same is true of KPIs and OKRs. What's better? What's the better measurement? Well, there's no better measurement because they're measuring different things. Okay, it's not like the difference between miles or the English system and the metric system. Okay, it's the difference between, you know, measuring liters and distance. You know, they both measure something, but they're measuring something completely different. So KPIs are about clear performance measurement, easy to track and report, almost like tallies, except tallies over time, if you will. Useful for benchmarking and comparisons within your organization, from one product line to another product line, or one work center to another work center, or one shift to another shift, as well as benchmarking against peers, you know, one pharmaceutical company to another pharmaceutical company. And it helps to maintain focus on the key business areas, you know. So I use KPIs often and value stream mapping to illuminate opportunities for improvement, especially when compounded with my variance reports from an ERP system. They sort of spotlight where suspicion might lurk in the organization. OKRs encourage ambitious and aspirational goals. Remember, this is about the future self. This is not measuring, you know, day to day. This is about the future of the organization. So we're allowed to be ambitious. We're allowed to be vague. We're allowed to be aspirational. You know, what do we want to be when we grow up? You know, I wanted to be an astronaut. Yeah. Well, my glasses killed that idea in the 5th grade. Enhance alignment and transparency across the organization. OKRs, in order to be ambitious and aspirational, you've got to be transparent, because you're not going to do it alone. You have to collaborate. You have to share your dreams. You have to share your fears. And it focuses on measurable results. You know, like what are we today? What are we tomorrow? And, you know, how are we marking the progress along our course? And of course, it has to promote continuous improvement and innovation. The innovation piece is the aspirational component. It's like, what do we aspire to? How, you know, how are we going to dream these dreams, and how are we going to achieve them? And continuous improvement is to make sure that we're always making the best use of our resources and our assets that are at our disposal. The cons, KPIs can, you know, focus on short term instead of long term. And of course, we already talked about them being gamed if they sit stale long enough and becoming irrelevant. You know, when I used to implement ERP systems in the 1990s, you know, people would do their month-end reports, and back then it was, you know, the big wide report outs, and there, you know, had these folders with the cables through them, and they would run their, you know, end of month trial balances, or the end of month AP aging, or the end of month open orders report, and they'd put it in one of these folders, and they wouldn't even look at it. They'd stick it on a shelf, and that's where it would remain. Okay, so people were doing these tasks because that's the way they always did it, and you know, we have to make sure that we're focusing on what's important, measuring what's important, and not measuring what's not important, because it's just a distraction. And in the, you know, terms of lean, it would be considered a waste. I mentioned it may lead to complacency if targets are too easy to meet. And of course, if we have too much of these KPIs, well, which one is the KPI that is most important? And God forbid we get conflicting KPIs. You know, how do we reconcile both of those? The cons of OKRs, on the other hand, can be challenging to set meaningful and measurable key results. I'm going to ask a hypothetical, but it's not really a hypothetical, because I'm going to give you the answer because there is an answer to this. How much data do you have to collect and analyze in order to guarantee with absolute certainty an outcome? So I'm going to repeat that. How much data do you have to collect and analyze to absolutely guarantee with certainty an outcome? So theoretically, it would be infinite amounts of data and infinite amounts of analysis of that data. But who's got that kind of time, right? So I would propose for your consideration, that we make our decisions when our level of confidence exceeds our level of fear. So how do we build confidence? Certainly data is part of that confidence building. Does the data support our decision? Okay. Then we have to take a look at ourselves. Are we capable of delivering on this decision personally? If not, what are our shortcomings? How about our colleagues? Can we augment my shortcomings with their strengths and build a team that's going to be able to engage this challenge? What about the apparatus? Maybe those people have the talent, but they're not available. So what we have to do is when we're building a decision, we're in that feed input loop. We're considering not just the data, but can we, even if the data said we can do it, can we actually physically, mentally, financially do it? Okay, so these are things that OKRs take into consideration. Is it possible? We have to make sure that our eyes do not, our appetite does not exceed our stomach capabilities. I've written a bit on Dunning-Kruger, where we don't know what we don't know until we fall off the cliff, right? So, we might be ambitious, but that doesn't mean that it's going to be successful. And sometimes we don't know what we don't know, and we're going on our gut instinct. And we have to guard against letting our ego and our hubris blind us from facts and the warning signs that come along with it. And the last is on this one, which is really quite significant, is it may require significant culture change and buy-in from all levels. Okay, OKRs rely a lot more on fuzziness than they do data. How do we feel we're doing? How are we doing? What do we know? What do we think? What can we prove? Okay, some organizations have a low tolerance for risk. Now, it's one of the challenges I have every once in a while when I look at the Toyota production system, is that when a problem is faced, a team will get together and they will try to figure out a way to solve that problem. But of course, everybody's got to agree to that approach, or at least theoretically, they all have to agree to that approach. And that adds friction to creating a decision. Not always that it's bad, but say the problem is metallurgy, and I'm on that team. Okay, I know nothing about metallurgy, but I'm on the production team, and it involves metallurgy and metal parts, so I've been called to be on that team. Well, what's going to happen is that for me to put my signature on that, well, I've got to be pretty well convinced that the solution is going to work, which means that I'm going to be very conservative, because I don't really understand the latest and greatest technology as it pertains to metallurgy. I'm just a guy that's on the production floor. So the really great ideas, the bold ideas, I might not sign off on because I don't have the level of confidence in it. So what could end up happening is you get mediocre decisions that are late. So we have to make sure that the corporate culture is able to embrace to the best of its ability the idea of OKRs and working in the area where it's not quite snapped into focus. So when to use them? KPIs used for tracking long-term performance. When stable and consistent metrics are needed, we want to make sure that the weather report is good so we can go out sailing. And we know that July is great weather for the Aegean, and so that's what our expectation is. And we're only looking for the anomalies if and when they occur. OKRs, on the other hand, are most suitable for dynamic environments, especially innovation companies, especially aspects of organizations that are being innovative. Maybe it's a new product line where we don't know the answers, and we know that we don't know the answers. That's where OKRs are most applicable, especially as they guide us to a goal towards that press release someday. So at this point, I'm going to share with you, before I do that, why don't we open it up for a few questions, if that's okay?
Yeah, so if anybody has a question, feel free to unmute yourself or raise your hand and I can unmute you.
Hey, Joe, I've got a question for you. So in our organization, everybody wants to have the ability to showcase the work that they're doing. And a lot of times that work is really just KPI based, but they want to call them an OKR. And we want to focus the OKRs on just those innovative things like you're talking about, where we really do need that alignment. How do we, or have you found a good way to make people still feel valued, but don't give them an opportunity to have their own OKRs, but they want to feel like they're part of the big picture?
And Joe, you are muted. I think I accidentally clicked your mute button.
There we go. Am I unmuted now?
Yes, you are.
Good. Okay, good. So, I think this is a challenge with the ego, if you will, in this particular case, because KPIs are neither above nor below OKRs. I would not say that one is more important than the other, or one is less important than the other. They have equal weight in my mind, or in my eyes, in my opinion. They just serve different purposes. So I would probably go back to my definitions of OKRs, or even your definitions. I mean, because these definitions are made up by people. They're not laws of physics. Okay, therefore they could be bent and broken by people. So I would establish a definition for what is an OKR and what is a KPI. And I would then say what you're measuring is a KPI, and that's just the way it is. You have to say it, of course, a little bit more diplomatically than I did, but for brevity's sake, that's what I'm doing. But I think there's hazard in defining something as something else, and pretending that it is something else, because then the meaning and the usefulness degrades. Does that answer your question?
It does. I had some similar thoughts, and so but wanted to see if you shared that view. So
yeah,
I think the idea of pretending that what is a KPI is an OKR is what's been causing us some issue.
Yeah. Any other questions?
Don't see anything in the chat
Okay.
box.
Okay, so I'm going to slide this over, and I think that I did this so that everybody could still see it, right? Is that true?
Yes.
Yes.
Okay, you're able to see this. Okay, so this is a game board. Okay, I'll zoom out a little bit. This is a game board I created. Now, when I actually use this game board, you have to keep in mind that this particular one is about 1 meter tall and about 6 meters long. Okay, so it's big, it's an imposing thing, and it's on the wall. And I call this game board turning a vision into a reality. And what I do is I ask people, as an icebreaker, what makes a vision a vision? And this is all run by sticky notes, right? So everybody gets a chance to, share what their ideas of vision are, and put it up here and explain themselves. And it's just sort of like get people thinking, get people engaged. But then we go on to the next cell or subroutine in the game board. And, people are probably in lean world are probably used to this: people, processes, and technology. All right. And what I ask them to do is, okay, what's going to happen with the people? What's going to happen with the tech processes? And what's going to happen with technology? And what we do is we, everybody's putting on their sticky notes and explaining it. And then we put it into time buckets. Okay, because there's predecessor, successors activity with respect to people and processes and technology. So now what we're doing is we're putting these into time buckets. Now, mind you, we're not talking about data right now. We're talking about what people are thinking, right? And by the way, while we're doing our thing as a company, the marketplace is doing its thing. And the marketplace is not just anymore our competitor. The marketplace is geopolitics, the marketplace is supply chain, the marketplace is everything that happens outside of our four walls. Okay, so what's happening outside of our four walls, and how does that, or how might that influence our people, our plans for people, processes, and technology? All right. So when we're done here, we've actually established OKRs, okay, of what's going to happen and when it's going to happen. All right. Then we move on to the next subroutine. And this subroutine basically is, identifies 4 teams. Now it could be 2 teams, it could be 6 teams, but settled on 4 teams for this particular exercise. And each team has a focus area. So the focus area might be, say, product design. All right. And so you have focus area, it's product design, and you have people that are assigned to that particular team. And then what they're looking at is time to value and business value. And you have short term is on the right, and high impact or high value is on the left, up. And these up here end up being your no-brainers. These are the things that you want to do. And these things are wise choices, and then there's everything else. But the initial phase of this part of the exercise is people are just putting up their fantastic ideas. I think we should do this for product design. I think we should do this. I think we should do that. And then they look at the assortment of ideas, and then they say, well, these are no-brainers, and these are not so good, and these are wise choices. All right. So again, we're still looking at OKRs because we haven't assigned anything that's measurable to it. These are all gut instincts. However, we then get into our specific ideas. Our first round and our second round, which I call bold ideas, these are high risk, high reward. And if I take a look at an idea, what I have is what describe the idea in 2 cells, and then what are the tech enablers, what's the business value, what problems are we solving, what's the time to implement, the potential to scale, what is the KPI, how are we going to measure this idea, what's the level of complexity, and what's, if any, external partners involved. But now what we're doing is we're establishing, the KPIs that are associated with the specific idea. And when the 3 or the 4 focus areas are done sharing their ideas, everybody's given sticky money, and they're allowed to vote on which projects or opportunities they want to invest in. All right. It's basically a dot vote is really what it comes down to, but it's kind of cool because we use sticky money instead. And then the second to last is, how do our ideas shape the vision? And logistical, these are the things that we have to buy. Tactical are the plans, and strategic are the big major muscle movements and when they're going to be completed. So you think about marketing. Marketing might be the strategy for this new product, right? So you have marketing as a strategy, and it might take a few years for that marketing strategy to be completed. However, we have a bunch of tactics that we have to deploy in order to support that strategy. Say there's social media marketing, and there's conference marketing, and there's might be magazine marketing, and who knows, Goodyear has a blimp, right? So we have all of our tactics which drive our logistical to our when we expect our strategy to be delivered. Now, each one of these strategies has got its own endpoint. And when they're all complete, then we're going to be able to recognize what the vision of our press release in the future. And of course, each one of these focus areas has its own vision of the future, but then they have to be all aligned to the overarching vision of the future. So even if the blue focus area was completed in year 2 and the orange focus area was completed in year 5, they're still aligned towards that overarching vision of the future. So this is a visualization, if you will, of how OKRs and KPIs can coexist and cross-support one another while maintaining specific values and positionings in the decision-making process and actually in the strategy execution. So I believe that's all I have to share with you today. We have probably 10 or so, 15 minutes for open discussions and questions.
So Joe, is that chart you just showed us, is that discussed in your book, State of Readiness?
No, it's not. This is
Okay.
something that I've developed over the last, say, 2 or 3 years. It's I call it design thinking for operational excellence. It's basically the gamification of problem solving. If you think about your organization, and this gets back to the KPIs and the OKRs, you have a program that you want to launch. When I say a program, it could be an OpEx program, it could be a new product program, it could be a program to expand into Europe, it could whatever that initiative is, if you will.
Yep.
I use this a lot for private equity firms when they're looking at acquiring a company. But what are they going to do once they acquire it? Okay, what's that vision of the future? So so what I try to do is, and one of the challenges I have, we all have these challenges. I have a couple of pet peeves. My one pet peeve is I don't like meetings that end in the agreement to have another meeting. Okay, it's a big pet peeve of mine. Because usually that second meeting and subsequent meetings are rehashes of the first meeting. And it's quite bothersome to me, especially if I believe time is the enemy, right? The other thing that bothers me is that we get all these stakeholders involved in the meeting, but they don't engage because they don't know the language and they don't know the form. Like if you get somebody from the shop floor and you start talking to them about the X matrix and Hoshin Kanri, they're going to check out. That's it. They're done. You're not going to get any contribution from them, okay? Because they don't know how to engage. And so what we try to do with this approach is gamify the engagement so that it breaks down these barriers and permits and facilitates more people to engage. But that's something relatively new that we've come out with. But in this particular case, and the reason I picked on this one particular is because we see the marriage of KPIs, or I'm sorry, OKRs. OKRs are establishing that vision of the future. They're defining what that vision looks like. And then we're trying to figure out different ways of actually achieving that vision of the future until we have a unified purpose. So at the end of this particular journey, we've created our press release. We've established what the waypoints are, not data driven, but just like what has to be done. And then we've dived down into the data to create the KPIs, but how we're going to measure the performance of individual activities and how are those individual activities aligned towards some future self, if that makes sense.
This is an excellent visual roadmap to get to your KPIs and OKRs. Very good.
Thank you.
Anybody else have any questions? All right. If not, Joe, I want to thank you for taking time out of your busy day. It's so you're located in Germany currently, so you're what, 8 hours ahead of us? That's
Yeah, it's 6:20, 6:12 here right now. So
Yeah.
I don't know, I
9:12
always get screwed. I'm from New York, so I know I'm 6 hours ahead of New York, except that now Europe and United States don't exactly switch the clocks at the same time anymore. But
Yeah.
yeah.
All right. Well, let me close out this meeting by sharing my screen again. Few remaining comments.
Great.
Right. So hopefully that presentation went well.
It did. It did. There was a little glitch in the beginning, but I think it picked up and
Yeah, good.
no internet
Ah,
disconnectivity. So
oh, okay. Well, and the handouts are available. The handout is available, so that's up on our website as well. So if you'd like to see us get a copy of his slides, they're all out there.
where are they on the website, Bob? Just so folks know.
Well, you'll have to scroll back now because this was originally in July. I could probably just go ahead and post the handout. I've got it on my computer, but Otherwise, it's on the My ASQ page. You just have to scroll back to the July timeframe. is when I
Under
posted it.
which tab?
Library. So you go to Phoenix section community, then you click on library, and in the library, in the bottom or in the left-hand navigation pane, they have folders. And the very bottom folder, I think it is program handouts. If you click on that, then it'll have all the program handouts of every session. You can find the one from July there. Or you can just go into the library and type KPIs, and I'm sure it'll pop up for you. And you can find it there.
Is the video also posted?
The video is also posted. Yep, it's that also is in our library. So it's a different folder. So if you go to the library and you scroll down to the videos folder, that's where you will see the link. The link actually takes you to our YouTube channel. So that's the presentation is actually stored on YouTube, but there's a quick embedded link directly from my ASQ. So you can see the video recording there.
Are there any more questions on how to access the video or access the slideshow?
All right.
Okay. Okay, thanks, Bob.
Yep.
We will move on to networking. We didn't have a topic selected for tonight, so I'm hoping that someone can throw out a topic that they'd be interested in talking about this evening.
And I've got to run back to my plumber, but if I could just take a couple minutes. Just before this meeting, I received an email with a slide from, I think it's benchmark companies. And they have a couple job openings, and they asked if I would share that with everybody.
Okay.
So you go here and share that slide, and then I'll be done talking, and I can get back to my plumber. So they have a couple career openings, and the company's name is Benchmark, but their URL just says bench.com. So you've got a link there. If you have a smartphone, you can also take a picture of the QR code. But they have an opening for a quality systems specialist and a quality engineer level 2. So probably like an advanced quality engineer. And I know they have operations in probably a dozen states. They have quite a good sized campus here in Phoenix, not far from the airport. I think they're headquartered in Minnesota. We used to have a lot of tours of Benchmark company back in Minnesota. But they have a couple job openings. So if anybody is interested, I'm also having our placement chair, Nicole, put these 2 job postings up on my ASQ site. So for all of our job openings are in the discussions tab of our my ASQ site. So with that, I'm going to again stop sharing. I apologize for going back and forth and turn it back over to Hillary.
Okay.
Hey, everybody. Hope you had a great program, and look forward to hearing your comments. As Hillary will say, you'll be a survey coming out probably tonight yet, along with your RU certificate. So thank you much.
Thanks, Bob.
All right. Does anybody have any topics for networking that they want to discuss this evening as a group? I'm out of ideas, so if someone has one, that would be wonderful. Otherwise, we can skip the networking for tonight. Okay. Well, all right. Well, I
Hillary?
guess, yeah,
I don't know, like, I was gonna ask this question when we had our presenter, but
sure.
you talked about KPIs, but I don't know if I clearly understood. how to establish targets within the KPI. Like, a lot of metrics that we have, they measure, but not always clear on how to set appropriate targets. And I don't know if people on the call could discuss like how you've established effective targets to your metrics. Sometimes I have trouble with that, and it's not always like you benchmark to other industries. So how do you, maybe you've got a couple of ways you guys have established viable targets to some of your key metrics? I don't know if anybody has like how they've done that in the past, looked at historical data and just did stretch goals, or had some more of a scientific, robust way of saying this is the best way to establish targets for your metrics.
Do we have any thoughts on that?
Okay, I mean, I continue to research, but in case somebody has
Okay.
some thoughts on that, but
Well, thank you. Thank you for the suggestion.
yep, absolutely.
Maybe not helpful, but my experience is usually, executives will weigh in and they'll say, oh, we just want to do 10% more than last year, or we want to double, or, but it is very fuzzy, and I'd love to see a more robust method. Thank you, Jason.
Yep.
Yeah, absolutely.
And
Yeah,
if I may,
sorry.
if I may step in too, also, yeah, it's a great question, a great topic. My experience has been, as you already pointed out, doing historical data, just a statistical evaluation of the historical data, figuring out what's possible, and then stretch goals from that. And as was just pointed out, also management sometimes has some usually not helpful input, but in my experience, but what can be done? Industry's benchmarking is often the best case, is my experience as well, in that, just finding out what other companies are capable of doing, which you can do research online, or that's one of the things. I'm a consultant. I work for a firm out of New York, and that's one of the things we often do is we do benchmarking of quality systems, for example, for pharmaceutical companies. So benchmarking like that is often a good path. Just a thought.
Yep. And someone else chimed in on the chat saying that they were about to say benchmarking as well.
Yeah,
So I got a question for the original question here. Are you treating targets and goals as essentially the same thing?
Well, I guess if I have a metric, a KPI, it's measuring a performance, process performance, or maybe even if it's like a customer metric,
Yeah.
it's easy. A lot of people report out like, okay, here's how it improved from month to month.
Right. And
But
that would be
yeah,
in
go ahead.
some of the applications that I've been familiar with and used. Your target is not the goal. The target is where you want to be, right? So the way they were set up was the target, say for in a simplistic case, number of defects, right? Or better yet, customer complaints, right? Our target is going to be at 0 customer complaints, but then your goal is based off of last year you had 10. This year your goal is to reduce it to maybe 5, and then you're going to do it by some kind of actions that you're going to take. So it's, how can I put it? So it's a little bit like a like an FMEA, where you're coming up with some action plans that are tied to how you're going to get from last year to a 50% reduction, 10% reduction, all keeping in mind that your ultimate place you want to be is your defined target, which is another column that you're ultimately shooting for.
Yeah, that makes sense.
That's one way. That's one way I've seen it done that way, and so it makes you think about where you want to go.
Yeah, kind of like what's the journey look like, and then knowing what the end goal is, and yeah,
Yeah,
because we use like balanced scorecards, and it's easy to have things look green if those targets aren't appropriately thought through. You know, like, oh, well, it looks green. Does that mean our company's actually performing well, or is that just because the targets aren't really well established?
the targets that they picked were from the definition of, or the viewpoint of, what would make us, first class in our particular industry. What are the things that, the best companies would be doing, right?
Yeah.
So that was where we said, well, the target is that we want 0 customer complaints and this, that, and the other, and went through and picked various metrics. Okay. And then there's the different levels of the metrics too. And all of those were driven out of the development of SIPOCs for all the processes in the company. And then we had the primary metric that was tied to the primary SIPOC, and then we had sub SIPOCs. And then those also had follow-up types of metrics that were also monitored.
Okay.
Food for thought.
Food for thought. Yeah, I appreciate that. Thank you.
Okay.
Someone, Ronnie said in the chat that I also think resource should be taken into account. You can set KPI if you can't support the action to get to them.
Yeah, like resources,
Yeah.
skill level, number of people, technology, those types of things. Yeah, yeah, it's got to be a reasonable goal, but it can't be a goal that just misguides us and thinking, well, we're in green, we must be doing well, when maybe we're really not. We're just, our goals or targets, whatever, are not set appropriately. And when people ask me, well, how do I set those targets? It's based on capabilities, like Ronnie was saying, but maybe, like I think you guys mentioned, benchmarking to what's the best and getting a sense of where we're at. But if the best is so far ahead of us, what do you do with that year one? You don't want to set your targets to something you're not capable of reaching either. So it's like, how do you appropriately put your targets in place where it's okay to be in red, but it's set at a place that's going to really separate you and make you better. Instead of keeping a target that's the same year after year after year, and you just seem to be always in green, does that really mean you're performing well? So just curious to see, and I appreciate that. That's all good feedback on how to kind of think about this.
Do we have any other comments? Okay, well, I guess we'll move forward with the rest of the meeting. And thank you, Jason, for that topic. That was good. I hope you got the feedback that you needed, and yeah, can go from there.
Appreciate it.
Okay.
Thank you.
Perfect. All right, so we'll move forward with the business meeting portion. We just have a few announcements regarding ASQ as a society, and then the ASQ Phoenix section specifically. Some upcoming events to keep in mind. The Women Equality Symposium was held on December 5th, 2024. I hope a few of you got to attend that. I have attended that particular, it's more of like a webinar. It's not really a conference because it's virtual, but it's very good. So if you didn't get to attend that this year, I would encourage you to attend it next year. And then we have the 2025 Lean and Six Sigma Conference coming up in February from the 23rd to the 25th, and that will be held at the Renaissance Hotel in Glendale again this year, and that's an in-person event. And then we have the World Conference on Quality and Improvement, which is going to be May 4th through 7th next year in Denver, Colorado, and that one will also be solely in person. So these are your 2024 ASQ Phoenix section officers. I will be falling off, as I mentioned when we started the call this evening, and Rob Cornell will be taking my place, but David Gibson will continue on as secretary and Amrish Patel will continue on as treasurer. So we've got some new blood coming on board, which is great. I'm looking forward to seeing what ideas all of our new people have. So as I mentioned, we're your elected officers, and we do currently have a call for volunteers who are appointed. They are not elected. So if you have an interest in volunteering for the Phoenix section, we have an arrangements coordinator who is responsible for contracts with venues if we have in-person events. They're also responsible for setting up technology for those in-person events, as well as arranging refreshments at those in-person events. We are in need of a LinkedIn manager and an Instagram influencer. These two people do essentially the same thing on different social media platforms. The LinkedIn manager will post happenings at the Phoenix section on LinkedIn, and the Instagram influencer will do the same thing on Instagram. Then we have a scholarship chair position and student liaison position available. In the past, these two positions have kind of been with the same person because they kind of do the same thing. Scholarship chair basically handles our Ted Tall scholarship through ASU every year. We select a student or a couple of students to receive ASQ funds for their career in quality or something closely related, engineering or something that will get them to a quality level position. And then the student liaison, this person is responsible for basically connecting with students and trying to get the word out to students about what the ASQ Phoenix section can offer them. If you are interested, please send an email to, let me go back, asqphoenix@sections.asq.org. And this is your 2024 Phoenix Section Leadership Committee. As you can see, there are several people that are on the leadership team in the Phoenix section that are responsible for section happenings and just making the section run efficiently. So these are the people you can thank when you see them next. So we are looking for monthly program presenters. We are always looking for program presenters. These can be presentations on soft skills or technical skills related to quality in any industry. So if you think you might have a presentation on either technical or soft skills, please reach out to me until the end of December at hwerner@memberleader.asq.org, and then that will be switching over to a new member leader at the beginning of next year. So upcoming networking events, we've actually postponed our wine tasting until 2025. We are still trying to get that figured out. But please be on the lookout for event invitations via Constant Contact, and you can also visit our website to see what our upcoming events are. And we will likely be scheduling another community outreach event. We did have one in November at St. Mary's Food Bank, which had three people show up, but we were working with teams from other organizations as well. So we ended up packing hundreds of food boxes for children in schools who are food insecure. So it was a very successful event despite just having 3 people show up from our section. Hopefully we'll have a few more next year. The Phoenix section does a program attendance drawing. If you are a Phoenix section member and attend the program meetings, your name will be entered into a drawing for a stainless steel travel tumbler for hot or cold beverages. You can only win 1 mug per year, and 1 mug or 1 person's name is drawn at each member meeting. So last month we had Emmanuel Y who won the stainless steel travel tumbler. So if you're on the call, Emmanuel, again, congratulations. I hope you got your travel mug. And this is just a summary of the, excuse me, of the, I drew a blank, my apologies. of the survey that we send out each month following the program meetings. We had 55 attendees at the November program meeting, and we had a 19% response rate to the surveys that were sent out. Meeting performance overall was at 95%, and our 12-month average is at 89%, which is running above our current goal. So I think we are doing quite well. And then our speaker last month received great reviews. Our networking received mostly good reviews and a couple of neutral. Overall satisfaction was very good, and then the net promoter score was also very good. We had 55 people in attendance at that meeting. I saw we had 53 in attendance at this meeting, which is wonderful for holiday months for us. For those of you that have not had a chance to go to my ASQ or are unfamiliar with how to navigate my ASQ, the events tab is where all of the upcoming section events, including conferences and monthly programs, are housed. The discussion board is where our job board is. If you are looking for a job or you know someone who's looking for a job, this is updated every couple of days by our by Nicole Donraj, who is on our leadership team. And then the library is where you'll find previous program recordings, which you can watch for RUs and email Robert Mitchell through the end of the year for an RU certificate. And just as a heads up, please keep in mind that at the beginning of the year, program meetings will go from 0.5 RUs to 0.2 RUs. So just make sure you're tracking that as you're trying to get your recertification units. And that was not our decision. That was a decision made by headquarters. So just FYI. The library is also where you'll find newsletters, handouts, presentations, and mini papers. I just want to bring your attention to some of the professional membership benefits as well as senior membership benefits. As a professional membership, you receive professional networking within a global organization. You get discounts on training, programs, events, conferences, and certification. Your annual membership, if you attend one conference a year, is actually paid for by the discount that you receive for that conference. So it's a win-win if you want to attend conferences. And then you get access to online and published content. You get updates on professional news and issues for current best practices and innovative emerging trends. And of course, you get to attend Phoenix section networking events. Now, if you end up moving up to senior membership, it's the same price as professional membership, and you do get the option of joining one additional section or receiving a quality journal of your choice. They do have a couple of different options for the quality journals. However, there are certain qualifications for you to meet if you want to apply for senior membership. You need to be an ASQ member in good standing for 1 year, and you need 10 years of professional experience, plus one of the following. You need to have conducted quality work for at least 2 years, have taught quality-related classes at a college for 2 years, have been a senior member of another comparable organization, or currently hold an ASQ certification that requires recertification. Okay, whoops. All right, and just a couple wrap-up comments. You will be receiving an event satisfaction survey from Bob Mitchell via email. You'll find the survey link and your electronic RU certificate in that email from him. And again, just keep in mind that our VOC chair will be changing at the first of the year, and we will have that information updated in our slide deck as well as online. 2024 program schedule. Well, now we're done with the 2024 program schedule, but in 2024, we strive to offer 12 hybrid in-person or virtual meetings, one tour of a company, winery, or brewery, which we didn't end up doing this year, but we intend to do it next year, and then one community outreach event. This year, again, it was at St. Mary's Food Bank last month. And next month, you have another presentation to look forward to. Dr. Sharon Blakely is going to be speaking on building quality from within, our continue process improvement journey. So you can look forward to that. You can find us on all of the social media platforms if you're interested in keeping up with the Phoenix section. That includes Facebook, LinkedIn, X, Instagram, and YouTube. And all of our sites are listed on this slide. Are there any final thoughts, comments, or questions before we wrap up? I think I see some comments. Let me make sure there's nothing in the chat. Okay, so Bob was just saying, yes, the speaker slide decks are in the library tab of the Phoenix section, My ASQ community. So again, if you're interested in the slide deck, that is where you will find them, under the library tab. Okay. Well, if there aren't any comments or questions, that concludes our meeting. Thank you, everybody, for your attendance. As I mentioned previously, this is my last month as section chair. I'm moving into the regional director position, so we will be welcoming Rob Cornell onto the leadership team as section chair next year. Thank you all so much for allowing me to serve you the last 2 years as chair of the Phoenix section. It has been an absolute privilege. So thank you so much.
Thanks, Hillary.
Thank you, everyone.
You serve us.
Have a happy holidays. Be safe out there.
Thank you so much. Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you.